Good morning, boys. How are we doing today? It's Wednesday again. we
every week.
Yep, every week we change the time for this live stream. I don't know if you guys talked about it on the previous streams, but I got to take my kid to school at 9 a.m. And so unfortunately we had to move it forward just a bit to 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time to accommodate my schedule. Otherwise, you'll never see me on these streams ever again. So I know you will miss me, but here I am.
Here you are. Well, we also missed 2 weeks because Josh and I were traveling. We were in New York doing meetings, and they took place right over this scheduled period. So it would have been impossible for us to attend. So we had to make some changes there. So we've been off the reservation for a couple weeks and haven't given everybody an update. Also, we're just ripping up towards the end of October, and 2 months ago, what was this? Actually even longer. So end of August, we had, we had entered into this agreement to do this acquisition, and we had set like an outside date of end of October when the transaction would be completed. And we're thinking there's just no way that it can't be completed by the end of October because the deadlines of the contract were the beginning of October. So we were like, gave ourselves like a multi-week, almost a month buffer, but alas, it got extended, and there were some elements of the due diligence that kept pushing the deadlines back. And so so now we're extended way into November on the closing date. So no announcement today, unfortunately, other than it's been punted backwards, but everything's still on a go forward basis and looking pretty dang nice and actually getting more and more exciting by the week.
Yeah, it's looking really nice. It's unfortunate, but it's fortunate at the same time. There's so many, I keep like, this transaction so complicated. There's so many pieces of the puzzle that sometimes your freaking head wants to explode, but it's super exciting and incredible opportunity.
For sure. Yeah. I would say like the part that we're jammed on right now is this due diligence around the software and the servers. And so there's a bunch of necessary due diligence just to make sure we understand how all the code operates and how all the systems function. And there's a couple pieces of that infrastructure that hasn't been provided to us. So obviously we can't close until we've gone through, all the elements, and Caleb's been able to kick the tires as much as necessary. And as a result of the initial pass that Caleb did, found that there were a bunch of things that we didn't receive. And when we pointed that out, it kind of sent them on a wild goose chase that ended up being very difficult for them to procure. And so, so that's why. And it was interesting because like they were pressing us for these hard deadlines, and like, we wanted as much time as possible for due diligence, but they wanted this really, really tight deadline to close and gave us the, you have 2 weeks to do this and 1 week to do this. And we were like, all right, but I mean, that's not a lot of time to get these things done. And then at the end of the day, their part of the due diligence collapsed, and they've had to just like willfully give us week after week after week of extensions because they just haven't been able to give us what they know are necessary disclosures. So anyways, it's a bunch of words without saying a lot, but the long story short is that it's that it's going to be around Thanksgiving, probably right after Thanksgiving. Realistically, it'll probably end up just being like a month delayed. But what what we're excited about, and actually as we're talking about the crypto side of all this different stuff, we're excited about the connection of the Packet project with this really well-known global brand. And so it's exciting because as we market this global brand, once we obviously take possession of it, it'll be a persistent marketing in traditional media that will be able to associate itself with this, crypto and blockchain side of the story, and that'll all be on the Packet side. So we think that is nice because when you're marketing crypto, you're just marketing crypto. But when you're marketing a business, that's a persistent marketing thing that's going to have a marketing budget that's going to go on for years and years and years. And then we can kind of hook our wagon up on the blockchain side to this story. So that's really cool. And we also don't need to worry about like someone telling us what we can and can't do. Whereas if you're trying to connect a crypto project, for example, with any other traditional media business, then there's all these other, powers that be that make decisions. So in this case, this is something that, Josh, myself, Caleb, Jeremy are all, going to sit at the helm of, and we're really passionate about incorporating the Packet network. And as we get a little further down the currency as well to this platform that we've been working on. So it's some good stuff there. What's new in your world, Caleb? I know you got a bunch of personal quality things going on the house buying.
People probably saw the my face changing color as I changed between screens. I'm testing some Linux kernel code, which I am making a patch to the MT76 Wi-Fi driver, and that is to support, to fix a bug. Actually, it's a bug that is happening on these devices that I have here. Here, I'll show the audience a little show and tell here. I don't think most people have seen this, but I have...
You got the background blurred, so it's hard to...
Yeah, it'll probably focus once I no? Interesting.
That's all that looks like, a background.
Okay. Let me turn off the blurs. You guys turn it on. There we go. So right here, I have modems that are under test. So years ago with Rowdy, we were looking for what's the cheapest device that has best performance for cost, and what we found was that the best performance for cost was going to be found in these fiber modems, but nothing supported them. There's no operating system support. So I ended up having one just kicking around for like years, and then in 2025, early 2025, I went and dug it out of my closet and said, you know what, I'm going to install Linux on this thing. And that snowballed into getting code submitted to the Linux kernel to actually support these things officially. Ending up with actually a research project, the funded project to work on them. I have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them connected right now. I have the capability to support 15, and all this Frankenstein stuff over here. This is allows me to programmatically reset them, so turn them off and back on again. So I don't have to walk up to the modem to turn it off and on. So I can do testing, automatically. So whenever there's a new version of the software, it can automatically test itself. So today I was working on a bug in a Wi-Fi driver that only happens on these modems, and so I'm trying to write a very good explanation of what's wrong and why it should be fixed the way it should, and then submit 2 lines of code to the Linux kernel, and that's kind of how kernel development works. It's this much explanation, this much code.
Yeah.
But that's doing that, and I'm hoping that within the next couple of months, those modems will have the Ethernet working. I already have Wi-Fi working. I've had to fix the bug in the Wi-Fi. So I've got Wi-Fi, USB. Next thing is Ethernet. Once I have Ethernet, everything on the modems except for the fiber port will be working. So they'll be usable as like a regular Wi-Fi router. And these things are super cost effective. You can get them for, in China, you can get them for less than $10. You need to ship them, so that's an issue. But they're so cost effective because there's recycling. So when the ISPs get rid of their modems, they go 1,000, 100,000 modems, whatever. They send them to whoever wants them. They give them 50 cents each. These Chinese companies will take the board out of a modem that was used as a customer premises equipment. They'll take the board out. They'll make a new plastic case. They'll put new software on it, and for all intents and purposes, it's a brand new product. And they'll ship it out as a new product. But it's about a quarter the cost of an equivalent product if it wasn't based on a fiber modem platform. So that's why these things are so cost effective, and they're really nice. I mean, those things, they have two Wi-Fi chips. They got everything. They've got all the neat stuff, and you're looking at prices that are under $20 for a really decent one. So very exciting, and it's sort of just a little side project that's been going on. It's sort of off topic, but it's also sort of on topic. It's one of those type of things.
Yeah. What are like some of the use cases for it?
Wi-Fi router. Like like the edge extender for rowdy, that kind of thing. Wi-Fi sharing. You could use it you could run a VPN on it. You could put CGDNS on it. Put CGDNS on it, and then just connect to the Wi-Fi, and the Wi-Fi tunnels you into a VPN. All of those things are possibilities with a device like that, and because it's so cost effective, it's kind of like, once something like that works, it's sort of a why not case. Yeah. But as part of this little research project, and this is kind of just something I'm excited about, as part of this little research project, I actually put a carve out for some time to work on getting the modem to do actual fiber, and that's never been done before. Getting fiber modems with open source support, and it's a whole nother world. It's not normal fiber. With normal fiber, it's you connect two computers together, and that's it. It's one wire between two computers. With modems, you've got one head end, and then you've got not hundreds. You've got up to 32 modems on one fiber. And then you just use an optical splitter, which is kind of like some mirrors and stuff, but it's inside of a fiber. And so you've got a fiber that kind of branches off as a Y. Well, you branch 32 to 1, you plug the 1 into your head end, and the 32 can go out to modems. Now, you can get these head ends these days for under $100. The branching equipment is like $20. So if you've got an office or something and you want to run, gigabit internet to say 30 or 100 something places, this is really the most cost effective way to do it, is with these modems. But the problem is they're all based on this very old, antiquated operating system that it's more than 10 years old. It's really pretty bad. And you can't really do anything with it. It is what it is, and you just use it or don't. So getting optical working in modern Linux would just open up a whole new world for people who wanted to build, fiber optic deployments. Maybe it's just for cameras, right? You got a location, you got hundreds of cameras all around that location, right? Put a fiber modem at each camera, because that's the cheapest thing you can use to get internet to each camera, and then bring it all back to your cabinet. So lots of possibilities. These were all things we talked about in Rowdy, 2 years ago, but none of it was possible because the modems they only work with that very antiquated software. So getting this to work would just open those possibilities up for everybody. So it's pretty cool. It's fun. It's definitely fun.
What's the research project that you're working on?
I applied to an organization called NLNet, which funds important open source work with European funding. And
we obviously know NLNet because the network steward funded it.
Right. Yeah. It's the same organization, except it's a different fund. They're really good at organizing these funds and doing the paperwork, because I know how much paperwork is involved in these European projects, and it's just not enjoyable. You're not going to do anything. You don't even do any real work. You get a bunch of money, but it's so much paperwork that you just end up doing nothing but paperwork.
Right.
And NLNet is a great vehicle. That's why we worked with them in the past. Great vehicle for just organizing all the paperwork and then getting the money to people who are doing important stuff. And so the way this project's organized, it's like I have to deliver. I get a little payment every time I deliver one of the results. So each result, and so it's even more fun than just getting a lump of money, because I'm getting money metered out according to delivering the things that I wanted to do anyway. So it's like this motivation. You get up in the morning like, yeah, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to get paid, and then I'm going to do the next thing. And so anybody who's working in open source doing important work that's not funded, definitely consider applying to NLNet. We've said that in the past before, because they are really good about getting the paperwork out of your way and getting the money to people who are doing important open source work. And it's funny, a project that I did in the past called CryptPad got NLNet funding, but after I left. So this was my first time receiving any funding from them. But it's funny, we really know each other, because people in my sphere have been funded by them, and people in my sphere work for them. It's when I put in the project, I said there might be a conflict of interest, so I'm just going to let you guys figure it out. If there is, no bad feelings on my side. But they have a process where they kind of put it into the hands of somebody. They'll find somebody who has no conflicts, and then make them do the validation. I remember talking about this in the past. Yeah.
Well, it's great that you kind of have a couple things that are staying within your realm of expertise and getting to keep grinding on them.
This is going to be, because of all that testing in that cabinet there, this is going to be one of the most well-supported platforms for embedded devices, because we're going to get to the point where every time a new version comes out, like daily, it gets deployed on devices and they do automated testing. And that there isn't anything in an embedded world that's doing that right now.
Interesting. Well, it'll be very interesting once we get into this to see what kind of applications and use cases once we start getting into these bigger media distribution networks and leaning harder into CDN, because what's going to really be interesting is obviously Packet Network was never designed as a CDN network, but the other side of it is that with all of these nodes all over the world, it always made me think, like, what if those nodes were more powerful and had more capability? Is there a world where you could have pedestrian CDN out there? I don't know. It's just always gone through my mind, and we've always pushed people on the mining side, at least, running large server operations, and so it's and then I remember this problem that's well known in the networking space around Netflix, that when Netflix first started, I forget what the number is, I'm just going to butcher it, but they were using like some massive amount of all the internet bandwidth. And and it was a real threat to, you know, internet continuity. And so they had to create a CDN solution at the edge to solve that problem, and it dropped, you know, dramatically the numbers. I want to say it was like 80% and brought it all the way back down to like, you know, 20% or something like that. But it's always made me think, like, if we were to have a more ubiquitous use case, you know, in the media and entertainment distribution space, is there a world in which there could be, you know, community involvement in helping power that network?
I think there's a real use case for something kind of like a live streaming CDN, which doesn't really store data. It just receives it and then relays it out to everybody who's subscribed, so that the hardware can be a lot more lightweight, almost kind of like multicast. But multicast isn't really supported on the internet. I mean, they specified it, but nobody really ended up using it, so it didn't kind of go anywhere. But if we had something that solved multicast the correct way, then for anything that's like a channel or a live streaming material, that would be ideal, and it would be cheaper than CDN, because CDN, you know, you push your content and then it gets stored on this big server on the hard drives, and then it gets pulled off the hard drives and served to the people when they want it. And that's all very inefficient if what you're trying to do is something live.
Yeah, true. Well, there will certainly be some live opportunities with where we're going with this. Yeah, so it'll just be something to keep our eye on in terms of how to get this all done. But yeah, CDN is a big thing. You know, it kind of dovetails back to this issue in the due diligence that we've run into, specifically around the AWS servers and the amount of infrastructure that was being allocated to operating this streaming platform. And yeah, it's just kind of like unbelievable around the cost side. I mean, it is clear that they did not have a very efficient operation, but certainly not cost efficient. Maybe at one point it was, from an infrastructure side, efficient, and you go, oh, we'll just tuck it all into AWS because we have, you know, unlimited infrastructure scalability, you know, solutions. And then AWS sends you a $6 million bill and says, hey, yeah, no problem, we can do that, but you know, you're going to spend $500,000 a month on it. And
AWS is tricky like that, because you do want to build your app in a way that can scale infinitely, but it scales as infinitely as your checkbook is infinite. That's the problem.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's just unbelievable. I was we were talking to the administrator, and I was telling him, and I kind of pulled this number out of my ass, and I was saying, you know, yeah, I mean, that's why AWS is doing $30 billion a quarter. And when I said the number, I was like, that number seems a little high. Like, but I remember reading that. I don't know where I read it, but I'm pretty sure it's accurate, but it just seems so high. $30 billion a quarter. Anyways, when I said it to him, he was like, kind of called bullshit. He's like, I don't know about that, you know, but yeah, I'm sure it's high, but it's like, I don't know about that. And while we were on the call, I ended up coming back and being like, wow, they did 31 billion last quarter in revenue. He's like, you were right on that. You were wrong. You were low. You were off.
You were low. Rounded down.
But, yeah, man, it's just unbelievable. And it kind of also relates to what's happening on the infrastructure side. I mean, you know, during the duration of this packet project, you know, the rise of AI has occurred, and you're seeing the value of these major operations on the networking and infrastructure side, specifically on, you know, server side with regards to AI processing power. And I was actually just reading something around Bitcoin mining, that the value of the infrastructure for the same infrastructure that you can make $1 million a month with for Bitcoin mining you can make $10 to $15 million of allocating that towards AI for AI uses. And so what's happening is a lot of Bitcoin infrastructure operators are going, all right, well, we should take a piece of this and put it over here. And that's also because, people that are mining Bitcoin set up, for the most part, set up their infrastructure prior to this AI craze. And so they have really cheap energy. They've, domiciled their infrastructure into cost-effective areas, specifically because of the energy resources required for Bitcoin mining. And now they kind of have a edge in terms of being able to allocate that infrastructure to AI because they have such a low cost point, because Bitcoin mining has forced you to become as efficient as possible in terms of processing power and energy.
And NVIDIA just became the first $5 trillion company in history. That just
is happened. That true? Wow, just happened today.
Happened today, yeah.
Wow,
a lot of money.
That's pretty crazy. Well, Wednesday, it's a Wednesday where the markets are down substantially.
Well, that's what I was actually typing. I was searching because they had the Fed meeting, and it says that they're potentially getting a cut, even though he didn't announce that they're getting a cut. And so I think because he didn't announce that they're getting a cut, the market decided.
Well, he hasn't done the FOMC meeting hasn't happened. I think it starts at 11
Eastern.
No, it starts at I want to say it starts at 1 or 2 o'clock.
I was just looking up. It shows that he was.
Yeah, it says 2 o'clock Eastern is when they're
2 o'clock. Yeah, it's always at 11. It's always at 11. So it'll be So what did you say? You said Kalshi, the predictive market has it at 99% that there's going to be a rate cut today.
Yeah, I think unless it's changed.
So that's interesting. You got ETH hovering at just under 4,000. You got BIDI down, took a pretty heavy step back, couple percentages, 1.5%, 2% down. But everything's pretty, there's some volatility for sure, but it's pretty neutral, up or down 1%. ETH is flat.
Oh, wow.
So we'll know what's up. What does it say?
Number of rate cuts this year. Huh.
What, 2? Well, there's only going to be 2 more meetings. There's one. Oh, no. There's
2 cuts is 2%. 1 cut is 4%. 0 cuts is 92%.
Oh, wow. So there's a high chance that there's no cut today or at the end of the month or end of the year.
Is this the right one?
I don't know.
What does the date say?
I don't know. Is that emergency rate cuts? Maybe that's something different. Just say Fed decision in October. It's right there at the top.
Oh, in December.
Yeah. So
this is December.
Oh, Fed decision in December. October. So yeah, you need the October.
There it is.
2025. I haven't really used these predictive markets. You have, Caleb. You've made a bunch of money on these predictive markets.
Let's see.
There it is. Yeah, there it is. So that was the one you were saying. 99%. 25 basis point cut.
Yeah. So I think that kind of calls it. In this case, I just trust the market. Where you can make money off of those markets is in politics, because you can know that the outcome is going to be one thing, but there's a lot of people who are mentally invested in a different outcome that's just not actually going to happen. And also, to save face, political parties sometimes, we think, conspiracy theory, will manipulate those markets. And so, if if the prediction market is getting around 50-50, but you know that the chance is more like 85, then there's money on the table to just go against the the popular narrative that's being promoted. Somebody in France, not me, made $25 million on the U.S. election.
Yeah, that was the first introduction to the power of the predictive market, because, well, specifically if you want to talk about politics, but not talk about politics, but just when you look at like a decision, like people are going to vote on something, and then you could go to the predictive market and say, hey, we think this is going to happen, but you're also the people that are making it happen. That's very interesting. Whereas like if it's an outcome of like a sports game, you could have the best information, but ultimately it's still a lot of up to chance of what's going to happen. But, with something like the presidential election in America, when you looked at the predictive market and it says that it's like 70% that Trump's going to win, and that people are basically voting with their money, but they're also, or they're wagering with their money, but they're also going to be voting, then you could go, wow, this is actually really showing that the trend is this. The polling means nothing because this is polling and people are polling with their money. That's really compelling. Of course, like I said, outcomes that you can't, you can make an educated guess on, and you can have good data and, trend analysis, and, can give you a higher probability, or let's call it like an edge. Predictive markets, I think, at least allow you to put a wager out there. And the other thing that's really compelling, especially in the United States, is that these predictive markets just got sanctioned by the CFTC as commodity trades. So they're now circumventing all the local gambling laws, state gambling laws. So in states like in California, where you can't even, gamble unless you're on an Indian reservation, you can wager in the predictive market. So that's really interesting. I've never used it yet, or never wagered. I've used it like to look at it, trends and stuff like that. But and then there's other things that you can do that are cool with predictive market. Like, let's say, especially in sports gambling, like if you want to bet on, let's say, a team to win, the national championship, or to win the World Series, or win the Stanley Cup, or something like that, you can place a wager. And then if the odds move in your favor after you place the wager, you can exit your wager before the completion, before it ends. So you can be like, you can cash out and take a partial, benefit, which is really a cool thing. Some sports books and stuff will allow you to do cash outs. And like, if you place a wager and it looks like it's going to hit, they'll offer you like a pre-cash out price. And now the predictive markets are allowing a lot more people to do that. And so if you look at what's just happened just in the last like 2 to 3 months, these predictive market platforms, equity value has like 10x'd. Yeah. Like Kalshi went from like $800 million to an $8 billion valuation, literally, I think in the last like 8 weeks.
Yeah.
The other thing I didn't know, and Josh and I were shocked about this, is that Polymarket is built on Polygon. And so
seems obvious after the fact. It seems obvious after the fact.
But yeah. I just didn't put 2 and 2 together. I'm surprised that Polygon isn't like doing better than it is. Still,
it's always a funny thing, like the utility and the price seem to almost have no relation on
it's just weird. But I mean, it's a great crossover example for Polymarket, the success that it's clearly having, and its valuation going well into the billions, just as a independent platform built on a blockchain technology. I mean, that's pretty amazing. So, got to give credit where credit's due in terms of crypto mainstream adoption when you have a technology platform that's enabling, people to wager globally. I mean, that's the perfect use case for crypto.
Yeah. Prediction markets are a big part of the future, because if you build a prediction market for something like natural disasters, I mean, if you put natural disaster into a prediction market, then you can take the other side of that and you can create an insurance product out of it. It's complicated for people to be able to have their assets in enough prediction. I mean, because you want to be able to do multiple predictions at the same time. But anyway, this does open the door to decentralized insurance, which is a huge thing. And like decentralized credit ratings, that kind of stuff. A lot of really powerful stuff that comes out of the idea of prediction markets.
Yeah, that's amazing. Wow, I never thought of that. What if you could provide insurance, like globally people could wager on insurance claims that could be called off of a decentralized, platform, and you could make a lot of money. You could basically become a de facto insurance broker, because insurance companies make a lot of money. Obviously, if there's a natural disaster, some chaos, they have to pay out. But in lieu of those things happening, they're basically a prediction market technology where you pay monthly into securing the insurance. And then, wow, that's crazy to even think about what's possible there.
What you'd probably do is, and they did this in Africa. So for like small farmers, they wanted to insure, get crop insurance, but that's so complicated to do crop insurance, and like having somebody come out and look at your crop and say if it grew or not. So There was a platform that said, let's just create an insurance product that pays out when it doesn't rain. And so that way we can have rain measurement, and then we can say, okay, if the rain is below the agreed upon number, then it's going to pay out this whatever rate based on whatever you put in. And I don't know how successful they were, but back in 2021, when I did another research project, that was another project that was in our cohort, was a crypto prediction market for farmers to be able to insure their crops.
Wow. Really, really interesting. Look, this is where shit gets wild, is when we start seeing crypto utility, and it's not about blockchain or pumping a crypto token, but it's like, hey, these are like real utilities where you can have transparency. Obviously, where we need to get badly. And it's actually interesting because, with so much global distrust around voting, I really wish that voting was tied into blockchain, but I think people are afraid of that. It's easier to scare people about voting fraud than it is to provide true transparency using blockchain around voting. But
the problem is intimidation, because the problem is intimidation. Because if you were to say, okay, everybody's vote's going to be public, it's easy to put voting on anything, any computer, blockchain, whatever you want. But it's generally accepted that votes are supposed to be confidential. So we have all this process of, the ballot goes in the envelope, and the envelope you can't see. You can see whose name is on the envelope, but you can't see whose name is on the ballot. That's if you're mailing it. Or you have to go to the location and get the ballot and physically be present there. And they will check your ID as you walk in, but then they disconnect that from who you are once you're inside. If you're talking about like on the blockchain, I mean, the only crypto that's really anonymous is Monero and stuff like Monero. Yeah. But that's some weird math, and in theory, yes, you could do that. You could issue everybody some kind of a key and hope that nothing wrong happens. But not only it's when you introduce anonymity into a blockchain, you also introduce a risk that there's somebody with millions and millions of votes in their pocket that they can just deploy, and nobody knows that they have them, right? So like that's a problem with those anonymous cryptocurrencies, is that you don't necessarily know how much of it exists in circulation in total. You can't audit that. So you just have to trust that there's no loopholes in the system, and that nobody has quadrillion Monero that they can just throw at you. Same issue with votes, where as soon as you introduce that anonymity, which we consider to be necessary, then you introduce the problem of not knowing, which is the original problem, right? We're worrying about people stuffing ballot boxes, but at least if it's a paper ballot, then there's some physical activity that has to happen, right?
Yeah.
So we're
it's a tough one.
in-
It's a real tough one. I put my vote in for the November election, which is basically, just one item on the election ballot. But I sent it in mail in, and I got a notification that it was counted. So I mean, that's cool that they've added that in, so you get notified that, hey, your ballot was counted. Here's the date that it was counted. Obviously what you voted. So I mean, that's one place of some accountability that's starting to occur. But it's an interesting one that I think could be solved. There's got to be a solution. Some smart people could come up with it, but you bring up a great point. And also, frankly, Packet has been blazing a little bit of a trail, testing out some of these voting options, with voting with your wallet, voting with coins. We've experimented with a lot of things. It's been pretty fucking impressive to see some of the tech that came out, and seeing how the wallets, we were able to create those maps on, wallet voting, and seeing, the delegated voting situations. Really cool stuff. So hats off to you for, taking a shot at it and building something fucking dope. And it actually weeded out some bullshit, as well, within the community of people who, realized that they didn't have the type of, maybe community support that they thought they had. Because it was like, hey, if you believe in me and you want me to be your elected official, vote for me. And it's like, you might be able to have a lot of votes and vote for yourself a lot of times, but that's not the same as having community support where people are willing to vote with their wallet. And so it really shows the power of consensus.
In a classical election system, if you have, say, 10 candidates, and then you have a bad guy, and the bad guy has some support, but all the other people are split between these 10 candidates, the bad guy only needs 11% to win. That's pretty scary. But when you have delegated elections, and this was something that came up, where you have delegated elections, all those other 10 candidates are like, well, if I don't win, I'd rather this person win. And then they kind of become a pyramid. And if you have a bad guy, well, he actually needs to have, over 50% for real of the votes. And that actually came up because, when we deployed that election system, we did have that kind of like surprise wallet that nobody really knew where it was, and it just popped up and voted for itself. And it wasn't able to swing the election because the delegation kicked in and everybody kind of reached consensus on who would be the winner.
Yeah, it's really cool. And actually, New York has been experimenting that with, I think they call it tiered voting, or I don't know, where you pick like your first choice, your second choice, your third choice. So it's not just like a binary 1, 2, 3. And it makes it so that, so it kind of accomplishes a delegated vote situation where it's like, if that candidate doesn't win, then it, goes back down to the next candidate, and you can put them in order of how you want to allocate your vote.
That's nice to be able to, first, second choice, Schultz system or whatever, Condorcet voting. I like delegated voting particularly because I think that people know better who in their local community is a qualified decision maker. and that person can then make a decision about who in their local area is qualified, and that person can make a decision about who in their region is qualified. I understand that this is actually used in China. I can't speak to whether there are problems with it or corruption or whatever. I'm sure that people who don't like China will say it's all corrupt, and people who do like China will say it's great. But it definitely is interesting, and I think it's telling that Xi Jinping seems to really have China's best interest at heart. You have a lot of these like kind of African dictatorship type countries where you just got a guy and he lives in his castle and he doesn't care at all about anyone else, and the rest of the country just languishes. And that's definitely not the case in China. Xi Jinping does have a strong vision for China. So I think it could be argued, and people will probably tell me I'm absolutely wrong. I think it could be argued that the delegated voting system is working for China to some extent, because a not officially democratic system it usually ends up with just some guy who doesn't care about anyone and runs things his own way.
Right. Well, look, I think the problem is anomalies. Well, I was going to say the problem is with these digital voting machines, because the paper trail is digital and there's a lot of, you can manipulate. I mean, as you know, you could write code that could show you whatever the heck, you want to be shown. Though I think that the thing that really baffled my mind around the last election in America is there's some significant, and it's been way underreported. I've only seen it, like you could basically say, in the, algorithmic conspiracy side of, whatever social platform you like to frequent. But there's some serious anomalies in the data where between the two candidates. And so what they were looking at is between Trump and Kamala, that in counties, and they're getting granular, like down to the county, where it would show wherever there was like a disparity in the voting between, Trump and Kamala, that all of a sudden there would be a certain amount of votes that would counteract it to the upside. So you're looking at this voting pattern across a lot of different counties. If you were to look at just one county, you wouldn't be able to see the anomaly. But when you look across, like, let's say 100 or more counties, you could see that every single place that there was a difference, then there was a compensatory amount coming in on the other candidate. And they said that this data, like, if it's in a normal voting situation, you would not have this kind of cohesive view. If you look at how the data is spread, it looks like unnatural, and it's showing that there's anomalies, and those anomalies are coming out of basically these voting machines. So that is very concerning. And then, for just to add to the conspiracy theory, you just had a heavy donor within the GOP just bought the major voting machine company just now here in America. So it's like, and the other thing that was very interesting is that there's these updates that get pushed to the voting machine, and there's a certain quality of update that requires code review. And then there's a certain maintenance quality update that doesn't. And they push a major code review update under a maintenance quality update right before the election in America. And so it's just crazy shit.
If we were to bet on whether those voting machines are fair, I think that I would put whatever you want, that there's problems. Any software updates that are just before an election is always a massive red flag. And if the current owner of the voting machine is seedy, the previous owner was too, I really don't think that there has been. I don't know when. Yeah, I can't say I know when has been the last really honest election in the U.S. I just don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
2000 was a big scandal. Supreme Court reversed that election. You know that.
Oh yeah, in the year 2000 with the Al Gore and Bush.
So I don't
crazy.
know how far back you have to go to find an honest election. I mean, even as far back as the 1800s, you had Tammany Hall, and I know it's not blatant, it's not actually illegal to get a bunch of Irish immigrants, my mom's family, to give them something to eat and send them to go vote, but they were doing that as far back as the 1800s in order to effectively stuff ballot boxes in Massachusetts, New York, that area. It's hard to say if voting has ever been honest in the U.S. Or I don't know about any other country. I mean, but then people kind of vote for whoever they're told to vote for. There's an element of like any real change. The person never makes it. They never make it up onto the stage. There's always going to be an insider who comes up on the stage and upstages them, and it's going to be a choice between two insiders. So if you want the conspiracy theory, I mean my conspiracy theory is that I'm not sure if voting has ever been honest.
Yeah.
And even if it is, it doesn't necessarily matter because mass media will only report on people who are relatively friendly to the establishment.
Right.
So
Anointed in some way. Plus, you just need so much money to sustain, like any marketing campaign. And it's interesting having done marketing before and seen how hard it is and seen how much money it requires, and to sustain and generate global awareness on a sustained basis is very expensive. I mean, like we've seen billions and billions of dollars that go into winning, certainly a presidential election,
and it's a testing ground. Like there's no like everything you do is a test because there's no like confirmed data that says, hey, if you do this, you're going to achieve this result.
Right.
Like you have to try this, and this, see which one works the best, and then divert your energies into it. And a lot of times wasting, a ton of money. And you see this with marketing campaigns for everything, in particular, presidential candidates, where they put all this money into social influencers and podcasts, and all of those shit the bed. But then like something like Joe Rogan that would be free, you don't put any money in, and it literally is the difference. And you could go do billboards, you could do all this shit. And it's same with crypto too. We've experienced this where you want to go spend money on influencers, you want to do ads, you want to do podcasts, you want to do articles, and you could spend hundreds of thousands of dollars and none of that shit does anything. Whereas if you just have like, some sort of viral piece of content on Instagram by happen chance go viral and you spend $0 on it, that makes all the difference.
I think it could be argued that I don't even think you would have to argue this point, but the most powerful influencer right now is social media on a macro basis. And we know, and it's crazy at this point, society has essentially succumbed to these algorithms. And we've seen how potent it is to manipulate people. It's not just like, oh, you have a weak mind. It's what we've learned. If you studied even marketing back in the 80s and the 90s, then that repetition is what we learn from. So, and again, this isn't just about manipulation. It's like, you want to become an athlete, repetition, practice, right? You want to be good at anything, you have to do it over and over again. But the other part of that, the flip side of that coin, is that if you say something over and over and over again, people start to believe it. And the other piece is like, it's a lot easier to tell the lie than it is to prove the truth. That's also a fact. And so social media thrives on lies because it's very easy to make a meme that it's easy to believe, but it's hard to disprove. And so what's happened is there's just a couple media platforms that are able to get, and we know it's also addictive. And so we have a bunch of media platforms that are able to manipulate large swaths of the community. And we saw this happen, this is the last 10 years, going back really pre-Cambridge Analytica. But Cambridge Analytica was like, hey, whoa, this is a big problem. And now 10 years later, it's even worse. And so it's not a coincidence that Elon Musk bought Twitter. And people would say, oh, it's such a bad investment. It's not worth as much as he paid for it. No, that is the best investment probably in the history of mankind. He was able to take cash against stock that was given to him on options as a success fee. And he bought a social media platform that he was able to get access to the algorithm, made himself the most famous person in the world, basically. And was able to tune that algorithm. Now it's one of the most disgusting algorithms ever. I can't really use it anymore because it's just so vile and disgusting on what kind of stuff's on there. But if you're on Twitter every single day, and obviously millions, tens of millions of people are, I mean, your mind's being manipulated by that algorithm. It's wild. And by the way, your mind's being manipulated by any algorithm that you're on, whether it's Instagram or Facebook or whatever. But Twitter in particular becoming X, because it's text-based, because it's information-based versus picture and video-based, even though we know that's powerful as well. People are writing on there is they can serve up influence on a major level. And I think very strongly that played a huge role in what happened in America, certainly. And we know that X is available globally for the most part. So incredibly powerful stuff. And yeah, I don't know how you undo the circumstances that we're in right now of how manipulative these, algorithms are, and the fact that the powers that be that control the algorithm can essentially control the outcome of the marketing campaigns, because they can suppress even a well-funded marketing campaign could be suppressed on these platforms. So, they can keep in power, and they can keep, manipulating or serving up certain types of social tropes to communities that they so choose based on the power of these algorithms. So it's really, I don't know how you get out of this problem that we're in. Like, I think it's like a Pandora's box situation. And it's a little bit dystopian, but it's certainly the reality that we're living in right now. And you just got to hope that there's some people that have a vision for the greater good rather than what these tools can be used for in their more negative use cases. So
I mean, I just heard some crazy shit. I don't know if you guys, I mean, it's definitely conspiracy theory, but
we know how your algorithm works.
well, so I don't know if you guys have seen, but there's a huge hurricane hitting Jamaica right now.
Yeah.
The largest hurricane. Some are saying it's the largest hurricane ever recorded. But it's the largest hurricane to ever make landfall in Jamaica. And Jamaica's going to be forever changed after this hurricane, like catastrophic flooding, it's literally going to wipe off the infrastructure of Jamaica, and it's going to change everything about the way that Jamaica runs for the future. It just so happened that Jamaica, Kingston, has approved a plan for a smart city 2030. And what's the best way to rebuild into a smart city? Destroy what's there, and then you rezone it and rebuild a smart city. Same shit that happened to Maui, same shit that happened to Palisades, same shit that happened to North Carolina. And the hurricane was actually like the way that the models were forecasting it was headed north, and it made a radical directional change. Obviously, hurricanes do that, but the way that it changed so dramatically and then intensified for no specific reason, it's not like it went over like warmer water than it already was, and usually that's what intensifies hurricanes. It's just a little bit suspect.
Yeah, well, I know you've been deep into this weather stuff, and it's interesting. If you go back like 20, 30 years and people were talking about cloud seeding, that was called a conspiracy theory. Everyone's like, oh, no, that's bullshit. We don't control the weather. Now we know that they've been controlling the weather forever, as long as I've been alive. And probably just as long as airplanes have been in the air,
Working
And
to
so,
control.
What's that?
I was just saying working to control the weather, like just inventing, yeah, and that's what that's what all those fucking whatever, what are they called? Chemtrails and shit.
Yeah, the chemtrails and the cloud seeding, and like they know that is a way to create rain, and you can also intensify storms with some of this. Let's just call it technology, for lack of better words. But yeah, so it's very suspect when you see these crazy like flooding events that happen in certain places, and huge storms, and the fact that we know that you can essentially, I mean, not you and me, but like it's possible for man to create extreme storms and intensify them. That's possible to do, and you can be very locally targeted to like, hey, we're let's do it right here on this city at this time. Like it's possible to do that. So
you remember the flooding in Dubai, and
oh yeah, of course,
happened, and then I think the official story was oops.
Yeah, well, they were testing also in Saudi Arabia. They did testing of cloud seeding, and there was so much rain that dropped into the desert, and what happened is it filled up these dried up like lakes, natural lakes that like back in the day were lakes, but because of Saudi Arabia being so hot and there being no rain for about 50 years, all of a sudden all this rain dropped, and what happened is it changed the atmosphere in those locations to be humid opposed to dry, and then all these plants started growing, and now it's becoming these certain areas in Saudi Arabia are becoming these lush kind of environments, and because these lakes are now filled with water, they're starting to change the climate in those areas, and all this water is continuously being dropped from storms. And
I think that's cool though.
That's cool, but there's look that's messing with
good.
But that's messing with nature, so like once you start messing with nature, then it has it has other what are the like cascading effects to other parts of the world. It's not like bugs and animals and things like that start changing. It's like here in America. I don't know if you remember, Caleb, sorry to interrupt you, but I don't know if you remember, but like in the 2000s, like even in like the late 90s, if you drove from Northern California to Southern California, your entire car would be wrecked with bugs, like nasty, like caked on bugs. Now, if you drive from Northern California to Southern California or vice versa, no bugs. And so what's happened is all the agriculture has sprayed all of these pesticides on the foods and stuff, which kill all the bugs, and the bugs are integral to how the circle of life happens. And so what's happening is now animals who eat those bugs aren't getting food, and so they're going out and eating other things, and it's just that changes the way that the world works. So
yeah, the ecology. It's insane. I did notice that too. I noticed that usually when you drive up from Los Angeles to Northern Cal on the 5, yeah, you just get a million bugs right there. But that is a whole ag area now. So yeah, you just don't see it. It's not the same.
Thing is that the history of the world, history of humanity has been we try to control nature, and then there's unintended consequences. Things go wrong, but we try to improve on that and do better at controlling nature. But I think that I don't subscribe to the hippie notion that we should give up on controlling nature. Instead, we should try to understand the effects of things. There's certain things that are too risky to do. I will accept that. Like these ideas of launching clouds into the stratosphere to try to combat global warming or whatever, or genetically engineered mosquitoes. That stuff is beyond the limits, in my opinion. But I still think that we need to continually press forward and try to make the earth more and more habitable for ourselves. And just accept that there's going to be some problems and we're going to deal with them. And there's going to be some things that we shouldn't do until we understand them better. But we still need to continue to make progress. I'm progressive in that sense.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know if that's progressive. it's progressive from a humanity standpoint. But yeah, it's a tough one because there's some elements of preservation of, like Jerry said, with ecology, but also just the environment and stuff. And man is parasitic in a lot of ways. Human society is parasitic, clearly, because you look at what we do with cities and nature and environments, and it's pretty
well, I mean, France does a fairly good job. They're very restrictive about certain types of, a lot of environmental restrictions, very restrictive, but they have a pathway to be able to do lots of things. I mean, you can't build a toxic chemical factory in France. I mean, it's not realistic, but most of the things that you want to do, a lot of farming, a lot of activities are done, and yet the place is very well cared for. So there's proof that you can terraform a country or terraform the land and make it very habitable. But it's a challenge, like anything that's worth doing.
Yeah.
Well, boys, we could sit here all day and talk about shit.
So hold on, Fed cuts. Yeah, so the Fed cuts target rate for benchmark by 25 basis 4 minutes ago.
How's the markets?
Pretty flat. Nothing. I mean, I guess Biddy's going up just a little bit. I mean, look, I guess everything's gonna flip green. Put a long in.
Priced in. The poly market is 90%, 99% means everything's priced in, right?
Yeah. Well, I just think it's a green light, so money can come in now, knowing that money's about to get cheaper.
Yeah.
If you have loans, if you have debt, it just went down. It went down last month. It went down this month. So that's 50 basis points in the last 2 months. It really is relief. It really is relief for people. I know for a fact, I can just speak about America. Those basis points, they make a big difference. If you have student loans, if you have credit cards, anything with a variable rate, relief for sure. And it chips away. You don't even notice it, but your credit card payment goes down by 25 or $50 a month. It's like, you're like, oh, whatever, but it just keeps going down, which is good. But anyways, gentlemen, great hanging with you today. Glad to be back. We'll be back next week.
Yeah. So our new time, everybody, in case you're wondering, is 10 o'clock Wednesday, 10 o'clock PST Wednesday. Just because I can't do 9 anymore after 5 years. Sorry, guys. 6 years almost.
Should change. You got a 3-year-old now.
Yep. Indeed. All right, guys. Well, good to see your faces, and we'll see you on the next one.
Peace.
Later.